Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back. This is Ken Shoulders number 60. And today we're going to talk about the connection between NORAD, which is the nuclear missile defense for North America, and the Galactic Confederation of Worlds. And we're going to watch this little clip that's, I got it from David Wilcock, but I made a short of it and it's on my channel. Now, this is actually Dan Willis, who I do know. I do know Dan, and Dan is actually a good friend of Elena Danon's. And they're going to talk about Pete Peterson here as well. And this is the real reason why the Cold War ended. And there is a definite connection to the Galactic Confederation of Worlds. So we'll go ahead with that, and then we'll go through a little bit of a slideshow here. So
Right.
thanks, Brandon.
Okay. They were hovering above the nuclear silos, and what was happening was they didn't attack the nuclear silos. All they did was shut down. Captain Robert Salas had like 8 nuclear-tipped ICBMs, and they all got shut down in rapid succession. And these systems have triple redundancy backup systems. So, and the guards up topside were with their weapons drawn with a glowing red saucer above the silo. And then the UFO then went 60 miles to the other base and shut down their nuclear missiles as well. This has happened more than once. This happened in Brentwaters in the UK as well.
What most people haven't heard came to me from 2 insiders, Bob Dean and Pete Peterson, where both of them independently told me that in the year 1990, all of the nuclear warheads in the US and in the USSR completely melted down, became radioactively inert, and even the missiles themselves would just sputter around and wouldn't even fly a straight trajectory anymore. Right during the same time that all of these nuclear missiles were literally melted down inside the warhead.
So one very interesting thing here, and I do know about this because my father was connected with NORAD. The interesting thing about all of this is that there's this connection between the extraterrestrials and which is like the Galactic Confederation of Worlds and other groups, and what's now known as Space Force. So, and NORAD. So that's exactly what we're going to go into today. Um, and it's kind of interesting to know too that Dan Willis and Elena Denon are very good friends. So yeah, we'll start the presentation. You can bring that back up again. So this is on X.
Whoopsie. I didn't share.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so this is on X, and this is what NORAD is. It's the North American Aerospace Defense Command, but basically it's the nuclear missile defense for North America. And my father was part of this during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was part of NORAD. He was a radar tech who worked in the high Arctic. And we're going to show you some more pictures and whatnot and talk a little bit more about some of the people that I've been connected with and still are connected with that are connected with NORAD, essentially. So the next one, Brandon. Okay, so this one here is pretty interesting. The big black and white picture. My father is actually the guy from left to right. He's the first guy in the middle row, and this is during the Cuban Missile Crisis when this was taken. The picture that's directly below that, the black and white picture, is actually the headquarters of NORAD in the high Arctic. Now, below that, there's a color picture of that actual dome. Oh, no, Brendan, keep, please. Now, below that, there's a color picture of the dome that my best friend Al took when he landed his helicopter up there. So I'm really grateful that I've actually got this picture that he took. That that dome that you see in the color picture is the same dome as in the black and white. I'm not going to say where this is for security reasons and whatnot. And the other thing that's really interesting about this is the color picture of the guy below that dome. That is his father. His father actually is a real life Top Gun. Brandon, if you move the picture the other way, there's a color picture of the jet. No, go down or
This
go to
one.
the top. Sorry, no, go to the top of it. Just bring go back out so we can see. So that jet right there is an F-86, and Al's father was actually shot down twice over Korea in a plane very similar to that. He was shot down, captured, and traded back twice. And then during the Cuban Missile Crisis, he was shot down again. I don't know what kind of jet he was in that time, captured and traded back during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So he was actually shot down and captured 3 times. And there's a sort of connection between all of this and NORAD again, because they were, looking for the nuclear missiles. That's the whole story of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So yeah, now we can go back out and talk about some of the other people that I know that are connected with NORAD. There is a friend of mine who's a NORAD pilot who actually flew Air Force One with President Bill Clinton, and he told me that he actually flew the NORAD version of Air Force One. So that's somebody who's still a friend. I wanted to talk a little bit about John Hutchison, because John Hutchison was actually personally brought in by President Reagan for the Star Wars program, or what's called SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but this, can you guys see this when I'm talking? You might have to take that down so that you can. This is something that John Hutchison sent me. It's a document that he has that talks about the program that he was in, essentially. And this is all connected with NORAD again, too, because the Golden Shield that Trump is talking about now was actually something that John worked on for basically DARPA. I think that's probably the best way to explain that. Now, there is another person. You can bring that picture back up with my dad and everything again, Brendan. There is one other person who's very important part of my life that was kind of connected to all of this as well, and his name is Deacon Erdick. And Deacon was in the Russian Air Force, and he was basically like the Russian NORAD. And he was also a radar tech. And Deacon was actually the guy that mentored me in all of my high voltage electronics design and everything. He was really my mentor with all of this stuff. So there's multiple people that were in the Cuban Missile Crisis connected with NORAD, or a version of NORAD, even the Russian version of it, that are kind of important. So now we're going to go on to what happened.
I had a question. Can Darren point to your dad in that picture with his pointer?
Yeah.
Which one to see?
He's so from right to left. Yeah. You actually had him.
That one there?
I think. No, the one below
Next
that.
one down.
The next one. Yeah, that's my dad right there. Yeah. Yeah. And his name was Ed Kabursky as well, actually. So I was named after him. Yeah, that was my father during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this is the Canadian Air Force, because he was stationed and worked. I don't know if he was ever up where that dome is in the high Arctic or not, but he did talk a lot about it.
What's the relationship between the USA and Canada? Are they sort of like almost like one country, or is it what's the relationship between them?
When it comes to NORAD, they are exactly the same. It's all one and the same, basically. There is no separation between countries and anything else like that, because NORAD is the nuclear missile defense for North America. So what ended up happening And this is really, really interesting stuff. And this is where we're going to start talking about the connection between the extraterrestrials, the Galactic Confederation of Worlds, and NORAD. Because on the next one here, Brandon, and this is from Dr. Sala. There is a YouTube on my channel, and Dr. Sala's channel too, but there's some YouTubes that talk about all of this stuff. And this actually occurred on January 7th of 2023. Now, something that when I started doing this show the other day, something that came up that really, really got me thinking was this was done January 7th of 2023, and Nikola Tesla actually died January 7th of 1943. So I thought to myself, isn't that kind of interesting? And then I did the math, and believe it or not, it's exactly 80 years from the point of Nikola Tesla dying to this meeting occurring at Raven Rock, which is where the continuity of government occurred or happened. So it happened 80 years later. And I have contact with Dr. Sala. In fact, he gave me permission to use all of his stuff at one point back in the day. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what happened at Raven Rock here and sort of go through everything. Because this January 7th of 2023, literally 6 days later, on January 13th of 2023, I was asked on the Jeff Rentz radio show by Frank Chili, who's the executive producer of the show, and I talk about NORAD. I talk about my father. I talk a lot about everything that I'm talking about here, and there's sort of this connection that I want to kind of discuss and go through. So the next shot here is going to be. This is the actual radio show that I was on literally 6 days after the meeting at Raven Rock. And the meeting at Raven Rock was actually between Thorhan Iridian, who is Elena Danon's extraterrestrial contact, and the head of NORAD, essentially. And we're going to go through this and kind of explain, because this is the plan. The plan was started in the 1950s. And I actually did see a picture of it at one point. It's not fancy. It was about 5 inches thick. And it was 2 cardboard covers. And they had written the plan on it in a black felt pen. And it wasn't fancy. When I saw it, I thought, wow, this is really, I expected something a lot more fancy. And it was a picture that David Wilcock had sent me at some point. I did go looking for it, and I couldn't find it in my phone. But maybe at some point I can dig it up again. So this radio show was literally 6 days after the meeting with General Van Herk, the head of NORAD, and Thorhan. And at that point, the plan for disclosure was handed over in a physical jump drive. So the next picture here is going to be, this is actually me in the Navy when I was drafted into what is now known as Solar Warden, or the Secret Space Program. And just to be very clear, I wasn't in there for very long. I was only in there long enough to sort of say this is all really real. And there's a sort of connection between all of this stuff, essentially. And this is 1987, back in the day. The next one.
Where's the beard?
I didn't even have hair at this point. I'll never forget when they shaved all my hair off.
Is that your evil twin? How do we know?
Good point, Moray. So this is Raven Rock, and this is actually the continuity of government facility where Thorhan met with General Van Herk in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And again, that first shot where we talk about the disclosure meeting, there is really great YouTubes on Dr. Sala's channel, but also if you go to my playlist you'll find this actual thing. It's about 15 minutes long. It's totally worth watching to check it out. But this is where the continuity of government occurred. And what people don't understand is um, there was a continuity of government put in place, and Trump was part of it. But it's not just Trump. It was Trump, Putin, Modi, and Xi. So it's India, China, Russia, and the U.S. Now, I did have contact with him at one point when I found all this out. I said, congratulations on being the commander-in-chief of NORAD and of Space Force, basically. And that was kind of the continuity of government sort of occurred. Now that he got reelected and everything, that continuity of government is out. But the continuity of government is still in place in Russia, India, and China. And what I'm trying to say here is this is great news and hope for the world, because the Galactic Confederation of Worlds is kind of on top of all of this stuff. So that's where it occurred. Now, the next one is going to be a sketch of Thorhan that Elena did. And Thorhan is Elena's contact who actually saved her. She was abducted and Thorhan saved her. There's a real awesome backstory between the two. In fact, Thorhan and Elena were married at one point not that long ago, probably 3 or maybe 4 years ago or something like that. And this is General Van Herk. So Thorhan physically came down and actually handed a big jump drive to General Van Herk. And on that jump drive was the plan for disclosure that was actually started back in the 50s with Solar Warden and the William Tompkins story and everything else. So we're going to go into that a little bit more in detail here. So the next one is going to be, this is the shield of NORAD, our North American Aerospace Defense, basically. So this shield would have been in Cheyenne Mountain at the time that the Cuban Missile Crisis was happening, essentially. I've even got a picture at some point of that, a black and white picture of that. The next one is going to show the connection between Northern Command and NORAD, because there's a direct connection between the two, essentially. This basically shows the shield and then the Northern Command shield again. The next one is going to be, and this is where it gets kind of interesting, because this is where we talk about this continuity of government kicking in. And to my understanding, it was the military that approached Trump and said, listen, we think that there could be a possible a big, huge problem in the US, and we need to get on top of this. We need to get you involved. And that's where he kind of jumped in and everything sort of started. So the Q postings, you guys, are real. We're going to do another show about them, because I actually had David Wilcock back in the day send me the Q postings and the that come out of the war manual, and he actually sent me the sections that were all relevant, and we're going to go through those and talk about them in another show. So this is all kind of relevant to everything. The next one, this is where things get really interesting, and there's this connection between William Tompkins and NORAD, because, let's take my glasses off to read this. So that would be August 1st of 1952. This is William Tompkins' resume selected by Extraterrestrials, book number 2, I think is where I got this one from. He conceived NORAD. He conceived the command control center, which is Cheyenne Mountain. He actually designed it all. And then you can see September 12th, 1957, NORAD was created, being Cheyenne Mountain and the whole NORAD scenario. And Tompkins Center, his designs were used, basically. And the reason why is because William Tompkins, he came out of the Nike Missile Zeus program. basically he was responsible not only for conceiving NORAD and building and designing everything, but he was also instrumental in the nuclear missile defense with the missiles themselves, because he actually worked on these programs. And we're going to see that in a second here as well, too, with this next one, which maybe at this point I'll have Chip read this, because I can't see it good enough to read it. If you don't
All
mind.
right, so this is Selected by Extraterrestrials, Volume 2. So first two paragraphs are highlighted. Now, because of my years of extensive system engineering planning at Douglas on the Nike Zeus anti-missile system, I utilized recent data from the Air Force Missile Warning System at NORAD that I had also designed at Douglas. It transmits data to the Air Force SAC Command post in Omaha, which I also had designed at Douglas. We planned at TRW to submit my new Star Wars proposal back to General Gates. Okay. NORAD defines and tracks all objects in orbit around our planet and incoming into orbit, all identified flying objects, UFOs, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs. I conceived and prepared a Star Wars missile site plan and underground command center, control center, designed for an Air Force underground base in the Midwest.
Yeah. And you know what's really interesting? We don't have to read the bottom part, but you know what's really interesting about this is the fact that Cheyenne Mountain now is actually the command center for not Space Force, but what's called Space Command, who overlooks Space Force. So they took Cheyenne Mountain and actually reused it, if you want to say, and that's what they did. So there's this direct connection between William Tompkins and NORAD and the Solar Warden program, because Solar Warden, the whole reason it's called Solar Warden is because that program was to protect our solar system. And I know, and I've heard this from David Wilcock, there are 65 bases in our solar system alone that are connected with Space Force and NORAD. So this is all very real. This is William Tompkins' autobiography that we're reading here, essentially. I would highly recommend everyone to learn more about William Tompkins. And again, on my channel, if you look at the playlists, there's some excellent playlists on Solar Warden and William Tompkins in there as well. Now, the next part here talks about, you can go on to the next one, Brendan. This one here, I'll have Chip read as well. I made some notes. In my books, I'm always writing stuff. TRW was mentioned. Everything that is circled there was actually done in TRW. So that's the section that you can probably read. I don't think we need to read the top portion of that. But these are all the programs that William Tompkins was directly involved with that all have to do with everything that I'm talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a note in there. In the Cuban Missile Crisis, my dad was connected to the NORAD because of the DEW line.
Yeah, which is the distant early warning system. And so those pictures of the dome, that's the actual headquarters of NORAD in the high Arctic. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you where it is, but my dad spent time up there, basically. Now, the first one, the AWAACS, I don't know what that is, actually. I'd have to look that up. It is a program, but I'm not sure what it was talking about. But you can, sorry, go ahead.
Right, the following is a list of known programs at TRW as best as I can remember them. AWACS program, Operational Readiness Study, Command and Control Design Systems, NORAD Systems, which we referred to with Ed's note, number of alien entities types understood to operate in Germany in 1944. German SS interference with the 1,443, not sure what those are, timeline of the 1,443 implementing between 1889 and 1923, in 1946.
I believe those are the number of people, the 1443.
Okay. German bases in Argentina, German transport cargo submarine programs, Antarctica German conquest of 40% in 1930, question. German missions to solar systems planets, question. German missions to galactic near stars, kilometer-long cigar spacecraft carrier Starship development, cargo sounds like, site activation, operations, galactic mission capabilities and requirements, galactic spacecraft carrier configurations, next bullet, White Sands, New Mexico test range mission capabilities. The last one, TRW rep support limitations of off-site locations.
I have a question on that list, Eddie.
Yep.
So this is pretty advanced. So for the Germans way back 30s and 40s, were they a team with the Dracos to just get so advanced? Who were they teamed with?
Yes, that is exactly right. They were teamed with the Draco and the Greys, basically, and I even have a picture of Hitler shaking hands with a Grey, a real photo that I got from Dr. Sala. So yeah, the thing about Tompkins was he was brought into this program as basically a teenager, and he was brought in by James Forrestal. James Forrestal at that point was the Secretary of the Navy, and he was also MJ3. Now, he met with William Tompkins and Admiral Ricoboto and a couple other people in secret, because what was going on were these spies were going into Germany and coming back with all this incredible information about flying craft, anti-gravity, free energy, and all of these things. And it was William Tompkins' job basically to decipher and try and figure out what was going on. And then once they had done that, later, then he designed the complete Solar Warden program. So not only did Tompkins design the Solar Warden program, he also designed NORAD, which is our nuclear missile defense, but he was also the section engineering chief of the Apollo 11 when they went to the moon. And you're going to see here in a second what he actually saw on the moon, because in August of 1942, the Germans got to the moon first. They were there before anyone. I even have a picture of a swastika-shaped moon base that the Germans built up there. And we were never basically allowed to go back to the moon until just now, until the Artemis program started. And there is a connection between the Artemis program and Thorhan and the Galactic Confederation of Worlds that we can get into again down the road. Now, this is stunning, you guys. And Chip, if you don't mind reading this one, I will say that the main thing that they're talking about here, the 8 Solar Warden battle groups, in 1987, when I was in the Navy program, this is when a lot of the Solar Warden huge mile-long craft were actually being deployed into space. So, and then again, this is William Tompkins, February 25th of 2016, just before he passed away, talking about it. So yeah, go ahead, Chip.
Yeah, so it's about 10 years ago then. Galactic Federation is helping humanity build a Starfleet. All of the main 8 Solar Warden battle groups are old, really old. 8 of them. They're in the process of being completely replaced with 12 new ones, which is a major program going on because they are very old. I think first deployment will be 2 battle groups in 2031 or thereabouts, or close.
Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. And this is out of a book about galactic, or what is it called now? It's a book that Dr. Sala wrote. It's part of the Secret Space Program series, and it's about the groups that are helping us, essentially, like the Galactic Confederation of Worlds, and then going past that, the Intergalactic Confederation, which oversees the Galactic Confederation of Worlds. And for those that don't know, the Intergalactic Confederation are the Cedars. That is the whole story. And again, if you want to learn about it, the book that Elena wrote, The Cedars, is everyone should read it. I think it's the most important book ever written in history, actually, because it tells us the truth about, where we came from and what happened, essentially. Yeah. And I think the next one here.
Wait a minute, Eddie. Um, so,
So,
because you said it was very important, I just thought
oh yeah, yep, there's the book. Yep, yep. And there's some awesome, before the meeting, we were talking about some of the pictures and drawings that are in those books, in that book as well.
We'll look at page 526 later.
Yeah, you know what, Chip? I think we should actually dive into that. But you know what I need is I need a new Cedars book, because my book is so written over and into that it's not even probably appropriate to show it. So we're going to have to get someone to take some screenshots. Maybe you could do that and send them to me at some point, and we can dive into more about what happened with the Cedars and all that, because it's all very relevant to what we're talking about.
Your book, Eddie, is a collector's item, because everything you wrote. You think about that, right?
Yeah. I have a pretty close connection with Elena. I've had contact with her over a dozen times through the years, personal contact with her, so emails and such. So yeah, I did my homework. Let's just put it to you that way. Now, this is pretty interesting here. And again, Chip, we can probably just read the top, that top section, because this is a personal email that Dr. Salas sent me, and it talks about basically the Solar Warden program. So,
okay. All right, this is from Dr. Sala. To Ed, thanks, Ed, for sharing. It does look like the Rockwell chart being implemented using rocket technologies by companies such as SpaceX. And I think we've seen that Rockwell chart several times. That thing is fascinating.
And Tompkins first started working on that chart in 1952. He designed the whole thing. So not only did he design the Solar Warden program, but he also designed the chemical rocket program that NASA is still using. And that's what he was talking about by SpaceX, right?
Yeah, would you like me to put up the chart? Would you like me to put up the chart?
No, we'll look at it another time. Yeah.
All right, so does look like the Rockwell chart is being implemented using rocket technologies by companies such as SpaceX. A good cover for what is really done with anti-gravity tech, where humanity already has space colonies in nearby star systems.
Yeah, Michael Sala. And there's a little, if you go down a little bit more, Brendan, there is a little, that right there. You can read the whole thing if you want, but
All right.
the truth is like a lion.
Yeah, you don't have to defend it. Let it loose, it'll defend itself. Augustine of Hippo.
So that's the Augustine of Hippo. Is that Augustine?
Yeah, it's a quote. Yeah.
The early Christian guy. Is that right?
I don't know. I don't know that part. So
the hippo ate him instead of the lion.
Well, they're pretty ferocious themselves.
Yeah.
All right. So, hi, Dr. Sala. I love the quote you gave me. I'm sure you already have this. When William Tompkins passed away, his best friend Frank was allowed to release the Rockwell space chart. It went to a good friend of mine. Then he sent it to me. I understand the original version is on a large wall in the Pentagon or at the Pentagon. In his book, he talks about 72 alien projects, and how von Braun was not in charge. Dr. DeBus and William Tompkins are the pioneers. Very cool. Thank you for all the knowledge, and can I order the books directly from you? All right.
So a couple things about this. William Tompkins, there's a great thing that Frank did, the MUFON presentation that he did that talks about more about the Rockwell space chart that I hadn't seen I didn't see it when I wrote this. Basically, Frank probably was the closest person to Tompkins, and he is the one that where the Rockwell space chart came from, essentially. Now, what I did want to talk about is Dr. DeBus, because I asked Frank Chili, I said, I've read all of this stuff multiple times, and I said, I still don't really understand who Dr. DeBus is. And Frank said, Dr. DeBus is and was the head of the German secret space program at Peenemünde, also known as the Dark Fleet. So he was actually the one that ran NASA, and it wasn't Werner von Braun. Werner von Braun was the poster boy, essentially, for all of this. And this is when Project Paperclip happened, and they let all the German scientists into NASA and created NASA, basically. So that's kind of the backstory of who Dr. DeBus is. And he was at Peenemünde. Interestingly enough, Carmen Miller, who's in our group, her father, Bill Mueller, he was at Peenemünde. He was at that German secret space program. He saw the Nazi flying bell, and he mentored me back in the day. So again, I've done my homework big time on all of this stuff.
Where is Peenemünde?
Peenemünde was actually in Poland. It was basically where they developed underground the V2 rockets and all that stuff. But not only that, that's where all the German anti-gravity craft that were gifted to them by the Draco were, but they also reproduced a lot of stuff there. And yes, the Germans did have anti-gravity craft during World War II. Now, William Tompkins, because he was the section engineering chief of the command module, the part that went to the moon, he saw the live feed, not the feed that everyone else saw. That wasn't live. William Tompkins saw the live feed.
Yeah, it reminds me of Battle of Los Angeles. When was that? When was that? 1943 or something?
42. William Tompkins saw, he did see that as a child, actually. So this drawing is a drawing that's out of William Tompkins' books again. And this is actually what he saw with the live feed. The Germans, they landed in the crater, and this is the stuff that wasn't filmed, but this is the live stuff that William Tompkins saw. And if you go just up a little bit so we can read that bottom part, you can go ahead and read that, Chip.
All right. All right, so there are 6 ships here parked in the crater. Subtitle there, Apollo, Neil Armstrong, July 29th, 1969. I guess Neil saw this too as well.
Yep. Yeah, they would have.
That's why he had struggled over the years with psychological issues, I think. William Tompkins' drawing of the NASA live feed of starships on the edge of Sea of Tranquility crater, menacing the Apollo 11 astronauts.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
these were gifted. They were not built, because that would have taken some time and impossible to hide. They just literally appeared in the German.
I think the original Hunabu, if I'm saying that correct, were the ones that were gifted by the Draco. These craft were built later in the German secret space program known as the Dark Fleet. Now, interestingly enough, we've talked about Rebecca Rose a few times, a friend of mine. She was part of the Dark Fleet, and she saw a lot of this stuff. She's the only person that I know that has been face-to-face, meat suit to meat suit with a Draco. And she described what it felt like. Maybe some point we'll go through some of that stuff. It's really important to know this is the whole reason why we never went back to the moon. After, I think it's Apollo 17 in 1972, they said, you guys are not welcome back here. And until the Cedars came back in October of 2021, that's the point where things started to change. And eventually we got the moon back. And now, because we've got the moon back, the Artemis program started, and now eventually they're going to land on the moon, and we're allowed to go back there, basically. But we were never allowed to go back there militarily because of this exact thing right here. Yeah, so interesting. I think this is all the slides. If you guys have any questions or anything before we stop the recording. I can hopefully help answer some of them.
Yeah. So where the disconnect comes from, we have our secret space program, right? That's supported by Intergalactic Federation, and in parallel, we do our simplistic propulsion chemical rockets like Artemis. Uh, there's a
Yeah.
disconnect. If we have all this advanced stuff, we're playing around with the crude stuff. Clearly, there needs to be a disclosure where it says, okay, we're fessing up. We have the advanced stuff. We're joining the Federation. There's a
Yeah.
big disconnect. Why are we wasting our time with the chemical rockets and all that just to be a big bluff, right?
Yep.
Why don't we just get on with it, right?
Yep.
And
And
we have bigger problems.
you're
Well, when I ask the question, I know the answer because until we stop clubbing each other with the war and the crudeness and all that, which makes the second disconnect pop into my head, which is, well, when we began our talk about, hey, who's whacking these scientists, right? Whacking somebody and setting up a suicide is so mafia like. It's just not a white hat modus operandi,
it's
right?
the deep state is responsible for that. And Murray,
Yeah.
that's what's really interesting about that is James Forrestal himself, who was MJ3, he wanted to tell the world about all of this. And this is again from Frank Chile. Frank Chile said, Ed, I saw the actual crime report photos and the actual crime report. James Forrestal was thrown out of a 10 or 11-story hospital window and killed because of all of this. Now, these people that are been dying lately, it's the deep state that doesn't want any of this out there, because what comes along with all of this is all the anti-gravity and free energy technologies. They're going to change everything. And we are actually on a probationary period with the Galactic Confederation of Worlds. Once this continuity of government is finished and done and the wars are over, then things are going to change dramatically. And the disclosure part, we're doing it right now, my friend.
Well, right. That makes sense, right? Why are we talking? Because it's part of disclosure. Anybody who's not ready to believe it, fine, we're dismissed as
Yeah.
kooks. Right.
And
So,
so that when General Van Herk and Thorhan met, there was a large, it's probably about that big, sort of like a jump drive handed over physically from Thorhan to General Van Herk, which is the plan for disclosure. And that's what that whole meeting at Raven Rock was all about. So it all does have to do with the continuity of government and the fact that, yes, the extraterrestrials are helping us. They use charge clusters to deradiate those missiles, all of those missiles. And something that Chris Beskar has told me personally is in 48 hours, we can deradiate nuclear waste. And
that's the good news, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I also know from my contacts with NORAD and that they have actually done that with missiles in flight. They've had missiles shot off and they've actually deradiated them right in flight. So what I'm trying to say is the extraterrestrials have always had our back and they're on our side. And that's, why we're discussing all of this again too today. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're still clubbing each other with war, right? So the big contradiction, but I think the consciousness stuff is what's reigning here. Why
Yeah.
don't you guys wake up, mature into beings like us, right? You're all clubbing each other because you're afraid of death, is the bottom line. And there is no death. Your consciousness goes on, but you don't know that, and that's why you're clubbing each other.
That is, yeah, very, very correct. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Do they deradiate those by advancing them in time? Is that the half-life point?
That's actually a pretty good question. I think it's done through transmutation, from,
Like
we
an out?
talked about this white hole and black hole thing.
Mhm.
In that cycle, which is kind of like a Mobius strip, I think that's exactly how it's done. Now that you brought that up, Charles, I can dig into that more, and we can talk more about that, because I have a lot of information from Chris Beskar about this stuff.
And once you have access to ZPE technology, you're talking about easily affecting the nucleus of any atom. And now you're off on new science that's way beyond us, because we're just scratching the surface that exists, right? Let
Yeah.
alone how do I engineer it? And it's clearly related to the stability of mass and everything else. And thus you can envision, if the ZP is way, way more powerful than any piece of nucleus, right? You can easily create a technology that does affect it, and now you've solved your problem. You basically convert it to something safe.
Yep.
And yes, they do have our back, because all this advanced stuff already exists for them. Everything can be cleaned up. It really, the goal is the consciousness of humanity, right? If you guys wake up, you will get such a gift, you'll be accelerated forward. That's the plan.
That is the
Accelerate
plan.
the human race forward. But you
Yep.
guys have to mature. We can't give you the stuff you're just going to blow yourselves up with it. So mature,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? So there we are. That's where we're sitting,
Yeah.
right?
And that's what the whole continuity of government is about, is getting rid of the last stitches of the deep state that are deeply embedded in our financial systems, our monetary systems, and everything. Once this is done, which is going to be sooner than later. Elena has said that by 2030 we should actually have contact. And one of the things that I remember Chris Beskar telling me is that if they land on the White House lawn today, tomorrow Stavati will be in the spacecraft business. Now you can take that and analyze it as you wish, but that's
along with
something
Elon Musk and
Yep.
Blue Origin.
If they have the advanced stuff, then they're team too, right? They're teamed up with.
And also, we've seen inventions before, like the invention of the the aircraft and the car. Before then they had horse and buggy, and then the car came along. And then the aircraft came along. 3 years after the White brothers flew, scientists were still saying heavier than air flight is impossible.
Yeah.
And we've seen the Berlin Wall come down. We've seen the end of apartheid. We've seen the Berlin Wall come down. So that big things can happen that seemed almost impossible.
Yeah, exactly. The reason why the Berlin Wall came down is that the YouTube that we watched at the very beginning.
End of the Soviet Union.
Moray, that's Pete Peterson. That's part of his legacy, actually, again, with David Wilcock, is being able to talk about this. Now, there is a really great playlist of Pete Peterson on my channel as well. I highly recommend all of you guys to go check it out.
Also medicine, like the medicine, we've got before the life was quite difficult in the Middle Ages, and and people maybe didn't live so long, and some bits of it were maybe better, but other bits were worse. So in terms of medicine, they didn't have. So, for instance, my younger brother had jardiitis, and we lived in the Middle East. He would have, without the medicine, he would have died in the Middle Ages. So what else? I was thinking of Life of Brian. What have the Romans ever done for us?
Yeah,
anyway, but
totally.
we've got cars, so we don't have to rely transport buses. Okay, the society's a bit messy at the moment because we're going through this transition. But there is such a thing. People have lived in peace before in the past.
Yeah,
there have been long stretches of peace. It doesn't mean so. It's not impossible to live with long stretches of peace.
Yep, exactly. And we will not be part of the Galactic Confederation of Worlds officially until, like you were saying, Moray, we stop blowing each other up, basically, and
it's
our
possible to live in
consciousness.
peace for long periods of time. It's been done before.
Yeah, totally. So, does anyone else have comments, or should we shut the recording off?
Yeah, Ika wants back in.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead, Brandon. We'll.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Cheers. Take care. Bye.
I guess I shouldn't be saying that when we're recording.